This is Pet Life Radio. Let's talk pets.
Is your pet stressed out? Does your pet need annual vaccines? Which pet is best for a child? Would you know if your dog was in pain? Pet Life Radio presents The Pet Doctor, where you'll learn everything about keeping your pet healthy and happy. From pet care, pet meds and grooming, to pet food, pet insurance and dental care, this is the place to find out everything there is to know about pet wellness. Whether you have a dog, cat, reptile, or rabbit, you'll find answers for your pets straight from the vets, because it's your pet. Health matters. Please welcome your Pet Doctor host, veterinary media consultant and veterinarian, Dr. Bernadine Cruz.
One of the reasons we have pets in our lives is for their companionship. The bond with canines has strengthened over the thousands of years that they've cohabitated with us, from the fringes of our human encampments to now sharing our beds. But with this bonding, some issues have arisen. Call them what you may, my little shadow, super loyal dogs, Velcro dogs. These are pets that may be suffering with separation anxiety. How do you know if your dog is affected? What can you do to prevent it from happening? And if your dog is suffering from separation anxiety panic attacks when you're not around, what can be done to relieve the angst? My guest is Dr. Sharon Campbell, medical lead for veterinary specialty operations for Zoetis. We'll be chatting today about building confidence in your dog with love, patience, and medication where appropriate. We'll be right back after the short break.
Does your dog itch, scratch, stink, or shed like crazy? Come to Dynovite for help.
Order a 90-day supply of Dynovite.
Everything we tried failed except the Dynovite.
Pick up 2 bottles of Super Mega Fish Oil.
Get the 3rd bottle free. Packed with omega-3, DHA, and EPA fatty acids.
Super Mega is great for your dog's immune system, healthy skin, and soft, shiny fur.
Dogs love it. Try Super Omega Fish Oil.
Buy 2, get 1 free.
At Dynovite.com.
DINOVITE.com.
Let's Talk Pets on PetLifeRadio.com.
Dr. Campbell, I've had you on before. You are a fabulous guest with great information. Thank you for talking about something I see, sadly, almost every day in my clinical practice.
Yeah, it is a pretty pervasive problem, and I'm glad that you were talking about it, because I think a lot of pet owners may be struggling on what they could do about this. So hopefully after this, our conversation, they'll have some ideas and some directions on where to go with it.
All right, so we probably should start off. I mean, we come home from work and our dogs are so happy to see us. They're bouncing all over. We're happy to see them. And then we look around the house going, really? Why did you destroy the couch? Why did you chew up the blinds? Why did you do this? Are they just being naughty? What are some of the signs of separation anxiety?
Well, first of all, they're not being naughty. They're actually suffering from distress. They're anxious and they're fearful. And so I think that that's a really important thing for people to understand. But some of the signs you've mentioned, so you'll see destruction of property, you'll see disruption of property. So maybe the blinds are askew, all the pillows, you spent, the morning, put the pillows on the couch, and now they're all off the couch. They could urinate, they could defecate, or maybe your neighbors say, well, I heard your dog barking all day long. So there are many different signs that can be an indication of separation anxiety. Some of the less common ones, and you might not know about because it happens and it doesn't cause any disruption, is they could also be panting and pacing. They could just sit in one spot and just be frozen, or what they call immobilized, or they could just tremble and shake for most of the time that you're gone. It ranges from really obvious signs, such as the tearing apart of the couch, to something not so obvious, such as they may just be pacing all day long until you come home.
I think sometimes it's difficult because, yes, when it's overt, everything is destroyed. That's so easy to tell. But if you have a little dog, and where I practice, I have a lot of clients with little dogs. And if they urinate in the corner, if they've been salivating like crazy because they've been drooling and they're so nervous, you come home and it's like, oh, okay, maybe their fur is a little bit goopy, but how do you know if they've been peeing in the corners?
So you can use a black light. It will highlight the urine or saliva. And so for that type of thing, you could tell. Also, there may be, especially with the urine, you may notice if it's a wooden floor, there may be some, changes to the floor, looks like warped or anything over time if they use the same spot. As far as some of the other signs go, such as the barking, your neighbors are really a good source to tell you that that's happening. And then some of the less common signs, such as the panting, pacing, or just sitting frozen for most of the day. A nanny cam or not a go cam because they'd have that on their head, but a nanny cam.
That'd be a way to tell.
Yeah, right, exactly. But some kind of camera that helps you see what your dog's doing during the day will help you determine whether or not something is happening that shouldn't be happening.
I have to admit, I have a nanny cam for my cats, and I do enjoy it because I'll be at work and I have it set up so if there's a noise, it'll set it off. So, I can watch them. It's like, oh, okay, it was the postman going by and the cats are sleeping. And you check an hour later going, cats are still sleeping. It's like, it's a tough life, kitty. Somebody has to do it, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. Well, isn't that what cats mostly do anyway, is sleep?
Definitely. One of the things that I think is so hard for people to understand the separation anxiety is that, you expect your pets to miss us a little bit, but when does it go from being just missing us to becoming almost toxic? It seems like it has to start when they're puppies. Or does it have to start when it's puppies?
Yeah, that's a really good question. It can be either or. So for some dogs, if they're not really socialized well when they're puppies, if they're kept in a crate, if they're not gotten out to kind of build their confidence or become familiar with a number of different situations, those dogs from puppyhood may start to develop separation anxiety. Alternatively, on the other end of the spectrum, it could be a situation where the dog is developing cognitive dysfunction. And in that situation, cognitive dysfunction, I'm not sure if you've talked to your listeners about that before, but that's basically almost like a doggy Alzheimer's situation. And dogs on the other end of the spectrum, because of something that's, some dementia, they may start to develop separation anxiety. And then I think the other area that we see is dogs that have been rehomed several different times. They were in one home, they were placed in another home. Over time, that dog may actually develop separation anxiety because now they may have been a very confident dog, but now they've developed some insecurities with all the different homes that they've lived in.
So if you have a pet that has been rehomed several times, is there a way to build their confidence in a positive manner? Because I know a lot of people think that, I'm going to be a dominant person. I'm going to put this dog in a crate. I'm going to block it off. I'm going to be somewhat on the stern side. Does that work?
No, that doesn't work. In fact, a negative type of approach to these dogs is probably the worst thing that you can do. So some of the things that you can do to build their confidence is to do some of the things that weren't done before. So if the dog, and I think one thing that we probably should talk about too is that other than when these dogs are left alone, these dogs are apparently normal dogs. They, play with the owners. They go for walks. They don't have any other behavioral issues typically. And so it's frustrating to pet owners because my dog is normal except when I leave. And that can be very frustrating for them to have to deal with something along those lines. And so anything that you can do to build their confidence, so get them on a regular schedule as far as going for a walk, leaving them toys to play with when you leave them alone. It's really important that when you leave that you don't make a big deal about leaving. And then the same thing when you come home, not to make a big deal about when you're coming home, so that transition from coming and going is not so marked. And I think also getting them, besides getting them lots of exercise, maybe having them have play dates with other dogs, anything that you can do that will build their confidence to make them feel like build their sense of security is always very beneficial.
I love it when you're saying about leaving and not making a big deal. I remember when I had my black lab, it would be a weekend or a time that I had the day off, and I wore jeans frequently, and I wear tennis shoes a lot, but there was something about a pattern of putting on the jeans and the shoes, and all of a sudden the dog somehow knew we're going for a walk. And it's like, how did you know? I do these at other times or when we're leaving. People many times say, all of a sudden, I'm getting ready for work and my dog just starts going crazy and is barking and is carrying on. And it's like, okay, one of the things I'll suggest and see if you agree with it is go through the pattern of your woman picking up your purse and getting this and doing whatever, getting your keys. And then as the dog is getting all amped because of this, just put it down someplace else. Don't even say anything. Just, okay, I picked up my stuff like I'm leaving. Nope, I'm putting it over here. Oh, I'm going in the other room. The dog goes, oh, you didn't go anywhere. Okay. And you keep doing this till after a while it's like, oh yeah. Or then you leave and you just leave for a short amount of time and then come back in. What do you think about that? Do you think that helps?
I think that's very helpful. And in fact, when you talk about some behavior modification techniques, that's one of the key ones that they use is try to allow the dog to not think that you're, not be able to predict so well when you're actually going to be leading and going for a long period of time, so that, like you said, you pick it up, you go away, but you don't leave. Okay, so now he's disassociating that behavior because you're not leaving. Same way with if you just go out the front door, maybe walk around the house and come back in, you really didn't leave. You were right in that vicinity. And so gradually developing that or allowing some time between when you actually leave for a good longer period of time or leave for a short period of time, if you mix it up a little bit, the dog isn't picking up on those cues. And so the dog's trigger to become anxious and distressed over you leaving now start to fade away.
So Dr. Sharon Campbell, I should probably ask you, how common is separation anxiety? I live in a suburban area, have a lot of seniors who are home a lot with their pets, families with pets, etc. How common is it? And does it seem to have a regional type of penetration?
I don't think it's regional. And if you look at the statistics, it says that separation anxiety occurs in about 20% of the dogs in the U.S., but from my experience, I think it might be a little bit higher than that. So I would say at least 20% of the dogs in the U.S. suffer from separation anxiety.
What I find so interesting, too, is that I'll have clients come in and say, my husband or my wife sometimes has to travel out of town. And when we're both home, it's fine. The dog's fine. I leave, the dog is okay, but when my spouse leaves or other person in the house leaves, the dog comes unglued, vomiting, diarrhea, not wanting to eat. So it really can be very person associated?
Yes, it can be. I think in general, just being left alone is a trigger for separation anxiety for these dogs. And it could be that as long as one person is at home, the dog's fine. But as soon as everybody's gone, that's what triggers the dog to start having these undesirable behaviors. However, maybe there's certain breeds of dogs. I had a poodle when I was growing up, and that dog was completely dedicated to me, followed me everywhere I went, and, just had to be by my side every minute of the day. And when I would go, he then would attach himself to my father. So he had a hierarchy of who he preferred to be with. And then when I would come home from school, he would completely ignore my dad, which really would make my dad feel badly about the whole thing. So for some dogs, it's just having somebody at home. And for other dogs, it could be that one person is the person that needs to be home for them to be comfortable and not have that fear and anxiety of being separated from that person. I think it's very dog dependent.
Is it going to be breed dependent? Now, you mentioned you had a poodle. So are they seen with the studies? Is it one breed or another? Are mixed breeds better?
So I think any dog can develop separation anxiety depending upon the circumstances. But I think that there are certain breeds that may be predisposed. So I think herding dogs sort of fall into that category. They're a little bit more of a high anxiety group of dog also. In my case, it was my poodle, but that dog also, before I got him, had been in several different homes. And so maybe not being a poodle was the underlying reason for him to have separation anxiety, but just being in a couple of different homes.
Well, I don't want people to become anxious about us leaving, but we're going to have to leave for a short message. We'll be right back after this break, so take a breath. We'll be okay. We'll be right back.
Please have a seat in the waiting room. The doctor will be with you shortly. right after these messages.
Put on a perfectly pawsome pet party. Having an awesome birthday or adoption day celebration for your four-legged friend? Or just want a fun excuse to throw a fun party with your friends from the dog park? Deck out your party with Molly and Bandit Pet Party accessories. Party products designed specifically for pets. There are wearables, including adjustable pet party hats, bow ties, and tutus. The photo prop kits include funny glasses and hats. The party supplies and decorations include coordinating table covers, party banners, cake decorations, and treat bowls, cups, and bags. Everything you need to create great memories and Instagram-worthy photos. They're available in 2 colorful themes, tropical and fireman. It's a dog's life. Celebrate it with Molly and Bandit Pet Party at mollyandbanditpetparty.com/petlife.
Let's talk pets
Let's talk pets
on Pet Life Radio.
Pet Life Radio.
PetLifeRadio.com.
Welcome back to the Pet Doctor on Pet Life Radio. The doctor is in, and we'll see you now.
So my guest today is Dr. Sharon Campbell with Zoetis. I think this is a topic that sadly too many people are having issues with their own pets, and sometimes they don't recognize it, or they try to, they talk to their friends about it and they go, oh, it's because your dog is bored, or you're traveling too much. Don't let your pet sleep in the bed with you. Or sometimes, it's the reason because the kids have gone off to school. Are these some of the causes, or did we cause it ourselves?
Yeah, so the exact cause of separation anxiety is really not well known, but there are certain observations that people have made when they're trying to look back into this dog's history. And so one of the ones that's commonly seen consistently with separation anxiety is actually noise anxiety or noise aversion. And this is when dogs are fearful of noise. And we can see that separation anxiety and noise aversion can be what they call comorbidities or exist in the same dog. And one of the reasons how that could have occurred is maybe the dog was initially fearful of noises, and maybe it's fireworks or thunder or a car backfiring. And that noise happened just as a person had left. And so now dogs are really good at generalizing. And so now in the dog brain, they think that, okay, my person left, so now that noise is going to occur. So now the dog starts showing those signs of anxiety and distress when the person leaves. And so you often have to ask individuals that have a dog with separation anxiety, is your dog also fearful of noise? Because about a quarter of the dogs that have separation anxiety will also have noise aversion, and vice versa.
So it's this real insult to injury having both of those things going on, which makes this poor pet even more panicked.
Right, exactly. But some of the other things that can be triggers are if the dog is, like we talked about before, if the dog was rehomed several times, and you'll see this with dogs that come from shelter. I think there's a higher incidence of dogs having separation anxiety if they were rehomed from a shelter. And again, I think that is the dog becoming insecure, which each time it gets rehomed, not knowing that losing that sense of security that they would have and that sense of confidence that they would have if they had just been in one home their entire life. Other triggers could be not so much boredom, but I think lack of, because I think that's another misconception too. I don't know if you've heard that, Bernadine, but I hear sometimes like, I think my dog does this because they're bored. And that's
or they're
really
spiteful. Hear that one a lot.
Spiteful.
Oh, yes, I'm traveling and every time. Oh, yes. They see the suitcase come out and they start ripping things apart because they don't want me to leave. They're just being spiteful.
Right. And nothing could be further from the truth. It's just that dog now is, like I said, they're very good at generalizing. So the last time you left, every time you left before, the suitcase came out first. And they're very good at putting one and one together and coming up with two, whether that's real or not. But in this case of separation anxiety, when you pick up your keys, when you get the suitcase out, they know you're leaving because you've done that before. And so that just causes them such anxiety and such stress. And it would be like a person having a panic attack. If pet owners could understand that that's why their dogs are showing these behaviors, because they're just so very stressed and anxious and fearful that something bad is going to happen when you leave. And that's why they do that. It's not out of boredom. It's not out of spite. It's not because they're angry with you. But one of the ways to get around that, too, is it could be from puppyhood, where they did not have a very enriched puppyhood. And when I say enriched puppyhood, I mean they weren't socialized well with other people. They weren't socialized well with other dogs. They might have been confined to a crate, or they might have been confined to a pen. They weren't given a lot of toys. They weren't given a lot of exercise. And all of those activities help the dog to develop a sense of confidence, a sense of security, to become familiar with different places in the world. So going to the dog park, going to a neighbor's house, taking a walk and going left one day and taking a walk and going right the next day. All of those things can help a dog become very confident with their environment. And when those don't occur, especially during the formative years, if you will, when the dog is a puppy, those can all predispose a dog to becoming a dog that will develop separation anxiety.
Dr. Campbell, you brought up right now this idea of crate training. And I know one of the things that I will recommend as we're trying to get a puppy house trained, etc., is using a crate. And then you're trying to say that crate training is not good, or is it how it's used?
It's how it's used. Crate training can be a very effective tool in helping dogs to learn how to become house trained. It also can be a very effective tool to help a dog feel secure. But if the dog is kept in the crate all the time, is not taken out, is not you don't play with them. If the dog is just confined to the crate all the time, that's where you can find the crate can lead to some behavioral problems.
And somewhat circling back a little bit as to which dogs are most affected. Are we seeing, is it more with a single person household? It's just you and the dog, or it's a family with children or seniors? Is there any kind of rhyme or reason to that?
Not that I found. I think that what it really depends upon one is how well the dog's been socialized as it's being brought up. And I think also there's a lot of variability between dogs and their what they would call resiliency and being able to be left alone. And some dogs, could really care less if someone goes away, and other dogs will become anxious with that. So a lot of it has to do more, I think, with the dog's circumstances as well as the dog's personality than it has with being in a family with children or a family of seniors or a single-person family. Have you found any kind of trends in that way?
No, I think any household can definitely be affected, and it's all over the board. Some dogs, as you're saying, exactly. The owner will leave, the children will leave. It's like, yeah, that's nice. I have the house to myself. I can relax. It's quiet. Or it's like, it's kind of like the movie that was out several years ago, What Those Animals Do When We're Not Home. It's like, you definitely need that nanny cam for that one.
Yeah. Yeah. Another question is that I hear too a lot is, if my dog has separation anxiety, what if I get him another dog? And again, it goes back to that personality of that dog that has separation anxiety. It goes back to the personality of the dog that you're going to get from them. But one thing that I have seen is that if two dogs grow up together and then one dog, for whatever reason, is no longer in that household, the remaining dog, that may be a trigger for separation anxiety, that losing that one dog, having that dog no longer in the household, can trigger the dog to start showing those behavioral signs of separation anxiety.
I have also seen, Dr. Campbell, where sometimes people will get another dog because, it needs a buddy. Once it has a buddy, it will be better. And then you have two dogs with behavioral issues going on. Or you have multiple dogs in the house and they look at the one who's having this freak out, this panic attack. It's like, I'm just leaving you alone. I am going in the other room. I don't know what your problem is, but I don't want to be associated with it. So it's somewhat, I think, like people, where you see someone who's having an issue, you can either join in or sometimes just ignore them.
Right, exactly. And it's so dependent upon the dog's personalities and how, they interact with each other.
So now we can say, okay, my pet has separation anxiety. I've seen it on the nanny cam. My neighbors have told me the dog is barking like crazy. Won't do it after maybe 6 hours of me being gone at work, but if I have to put in a little bit longer, I'm gone for 8, then the dog comes unglued. What are the things that don't work?
So definitely punishment doesn't work. Again, realizing that these dogs are not being bad, that they're having a panic attack. There's something in their brain that tells them that this is not a good situation. I'm being threatened and I just need to either get away that's what you're seeing with a lot of the destruction is that they're trying to get away, trying to escape behaviors. And so punishment is probably the worst thing that you could do for these dogs.
You'd mentioned desensitization, not making a big deal out of our coming and going, having some fun things for the dogs around, maybe some food puzzles, things that I will recommend. Pet sitters, doggy daycare, you'd mentioned having them being tired, so get some good exercise in there. How about behavioral modification? What some other things can be done there?
Yeah, so behavior modification is definitely one of the techniques that you can do to help these dogs. And I think before we say too much more than that, I think one of the things that pet owners need to understand when they're using behavior modifications, they have to be consistent. It's just like raising a child. You have to be consistent with how you're helping them develop as a person so that you don't say no one time and then another time that is okay. So consistency is key to success with behavior, but some things that you can do with behavior modification would be timing of when you feed the dog, when you walk the dog. So be consistent with the routines that the dog is in. You can leave the radio on or the TV on so the dog may feel that, there's the voices in the background. That may be comforting to the dog. We've already talked about other pets with a companion. That may or may not be a solution. I would say that if there's a pet already in the household, that's fine. Whether or not you bring another pet in the household is kind of a discussion that you should definitely have with your veterinarian. But I think those are some of the things that you can do with behavior modification. You had mentioned earlier, too, about doing this, kind of pretending like you're going to leave and then not leave. That's, a good behavior modification technique, leaving for a short period of time and then coming back and then gradually increasing that period of time that you leave so that the dog is assured that you're going to come back at some point in time. All of those are helpful techniques that you can use to help your dog deal better with their distress and anxiety that they're feeling when you're gone.
It seems like it really needs to be almost a multimodal way of approaching this problem because there's so many different factors that can add in. And I know, sadly, I'll have too many of my clients come to me and just want a pill. And I'll say, all right, there are medications that can help, but that's not the sole answer. You need to do these other things. So what are some of the medications that may help?
So there are actually 2 drugs that have been approved specifically to treat canine separation anxiety. One of those is Clomicalm, also known as clomipramine, and the other is Reconcile, also known as fluoxetine. Now, if your dog also suffers from noise aversion or noise anxiety, there is a drug approved for that that's called Xilio, and that's dexmedetomidine oral mucosal gel. That's actually made by the company I work for, which is Zoetis. And that is approved not to treat separation anxiety, but to treat noise aversion, canine noise aversion. What other drugs can be used include some drugs that are actually used for people, but that have been shown to be effective for dogs that have separation anxiety. And then there are some what they call nutraceutical drugs. They're drugs that are not necessarily, they're pharmaceutical agents that are not necessarily considered drugs, but they would be calming agents that will help the dog, along with multiple other things, to be more calm during these periods of time where the pet owner's gone. And that's really what the goal of all of this is when you're trying to treat a dog with separation anxiety, realizing that the dog is anxious, realizing that the dog is fearful, and trying to teach them to have calm behaviors during that period of time that you're away from home.
I think what's so frustrating for people is that they think that after just maybe a week or two of medication, the pet will be cured of these panic attacks, is not going to have any issues, everything is going to be rosy again. And in reality, oftentimes these pets need ongoing, as you're saying, consistency. So consistency of your schedules, consistency of medication if that's necessary, consistency of what your behaviors are towards this pet. So oftentimes I think we're not curing them, but we're controlling. Would you agree?
I would agree. And I think that from the onset that pet owners need to understand is that separation anxiety is not something that you're going to cure, but you're going to be able to manage. And so setting expectations in the very beginning is key to what is perceived as success, right? And I think the other thing is that we mentioned the consistency, but it's also, even if you have the dog on a pretty calm plane for a number of days or weeks or even months, that there's always something that can have the dog relapse back. And so that it's not something that you're ever going to cure, as you said, but it is something that you can manage with many different techniques. And it's so important for pet owners to talk to their veterinarian. They may actually get referred to a veterinary behaviorist and or a trainer, but it's really important that pet owners speak to their veterinarian about their dog's separation anxiety, because it's not going to go away. It is not something that they're going to grow out of. It's something that if there's going to be any change, it's just going to progress and get worse with time.
And this is somewhat throwing you a curveball right now because we had not mentioned it, but cats and separation anxiety. I honestly don't think that I have ever seen a cat demonstrate separation anxiety. Am I just missing something, Dr. Campbell?
You know, cats are really independent creatures. So I think they show different types of anxieties. And I think so the whole Pandora syndrome that you see with cats, that is a manifestation of anxiety and stress because of changes in their lifestyle. But I think cats are less dependent on people. And as much as they like their people, they're okay when their people leave. For whatever reason, the way the cat-human bond has developed is so much different than the dog-human bond. They pretty much can deal with being around us much better than some of the dogs do.
Well, thank you. I'm glad I'm not totally missing it. But yes, I do agree. They can do things that will go, are you just being spiteful? Nope. All right. I'll have to give you some more attention. So Dr. Sharon Campbell, thank you so much. Is there any just parting words of wisdom on separation anxiety you'd like to leave my listeners?
I think one of the things is kind of summary of what we said. If the first step is talking to their veterinarian about their dog signs so that they can make sure that treatment can be implemented not only early, but also effectively so that they can start on that road to not necessarily a cure, but management. Because what we find with these dogs is that as even the most dedicated owners, if the dog is not treated properly, reaches a point where they're just so frustrated and at their wits' end that oftentimes these dogs get surrendered, or, even worse, they may even get euthanized because of the fact that the signs can't be controlled. And so I think the sooner that pet owners speak to their veterinarians about their dog's signs of separation anxiety, the sooner they can get some kind of treatment plan implemented, and the better off they're going to be as well as their dog's going to be.
Excellent parting words. Well, you've been listening to Dr. Sharon Campbell of Zoetis. This is Dr. Bernadine Cruz. Thank you so much for listening. Please tune in again next week. We'll give you more information on how to make you the best possible pet owner. You can also follow me on Facebook at Dr. Cruz and Pets. So thanks for listening. Have a great week.
Pets can be a wonderful addition to your life because they're a member of the family. Keeping them healthy and happy is important. Pet Life Radio presents The Pet Doctor with veterinary media consultant and veterinarian Dr. Bernadine Cruz. Whether you have a dog, cat, reptile, or rabbit, you'll find answers for your pets straight from the vets. The Pet Doctor, on demand every week, only on PetLifeRadio.com.